want to be the real estate agent that seizes that opportunity.
The harder the lead is to acquire the lead, the less competition you're going to have. You've got to have a reason to talk to somebody.
Yeah. To us, solving for problems in the real estate space, it makes an agent's job a lot easier.
Welcome back to your favorite podcast on the planet, Realty Talk Podcast. I've got my fearless host, the queen of the closing table, Suzanne sitting next to me, CEO and founder of Innovate Realty. What's up?
Oh, I don't know. What's up with you? I feel like we haven't caught up in a while. So is there anything exciting that we should be sharing with our listeners that's been happening in your life?
The Chargers are 7-3.
Okay, that's
They won
exciting.
last night. I am a little bit conflicted about it because I have season tickets. I've been a Chargers fan for a long time. Mm-hmm. The way I explain it to people is that it's like having a terminal illness that you know is never going to get better.
Yeah.
Because they just always let you down.
Yeah, that feels like Jets. Like I feel like Jets fans. I know quite a few that say something similar.
So I gave my seats away to one of the guys in our accounting department. Big Bengals fan, never been to a game before.
Oh.
I gave them to him at the start of the season, and I'm like, we're probably going to lose that game, so I don't want to go on a Sunday night. And it's a Sunday night game, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, they changed it to a Sunday night game a couple weeks ago. So I thought, oh, no big deal. I'll just stay at home and watch it with the kids. And so I was secret. I mean, I obviously want the Chargers to win.
Yeah.
But part of me, I'm like, it would be cool for him to go and see the Bengals win.
Yeah, that's nice of you.
But the Chargers won.
Oops.
Yeah, I saw him this morning in the office, and he kind of gave me one of those. We didn't talk about it. He gave me one of those looks like, okay, that was brutal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Outside of that, I mean, I got to. This is probably not the right environment for the people that are listening, but I'm in a business it's a professional organization called YPO. Mm-hmm. I've been in for a long time. And every year we go on this big trip.
Yeah.
So in our chapter, there's 40 members. We cap it at 40 members. And we do that to drive participation, but it's a member-run organization. And I've been in for a long enough time. I've had like little jobs, but nothing significant. And 2 years ago, one of our members that was going to be the chapter chair, so the gentleman that's going to run the chapter for the year, asked me to plan the president's retreat, which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I agreed to it. And in our chapter, we're supposed to go international one year and then stay stateside the next year, just to try to limit travel and whatnot. But that hasn't happened for like 9 years.
Yeah.
We've been traveling all over the world.
Yeah.
And he was like, we've got to do something stateside. Yeah. So when I agreed to do it, I'm like, this is going to suck because last year, one of my close friends planning the trip, we went to Spain and we ran with the bulls and we did all this awesome stuff.
Yeah. How do you top that?
Yeah. We finished in Ibiza for a night and it was like a crazy awesome trip. And I'm thinking the whole time, like, this is going to suck. Like, we're going to go somewhere stateside.
Yeah. It's a lot of pressure.
Yes. But, the recommendation was to do something that's like personal and try to create an experience, for people that they wouldn't normally do.
Right.
So that's what we did. I am so glad to be done with the trip.
Yeah.
Coordinating and planning and doing all that.
I know we actually haven't caught up on that trip yet because, of course, I knew you were planning the trip.
Yes.
But, it was like you were so busy with planning the trip, and then you were very busy with work as soon as you got back. So
yes.
Yeah, we still need to debrief on the actual trip.
It went well. I mean, I grew up in Utah. I love to hunt.
Yeah.
And so I took 36 members that have we didn't tell them what we were going to do.
Oh, yeah.
But we went elk hunting and buffalo hunting. And it was a really complicated thing to go and do because in the hunting world, getting a license is really difficult.
Yeah.
And then harvesting an animal is also very challenging.
Right.
And so we didn't tell anybody and we didn't know if anyone knew how to do it.
Yeah.
So we put all this time into, planning contingencies and coordinating, making sure people would be safe.
Yeah.
There's a couple of CEOs of like publicly traded companies. So I'm worried that someone's going to get hurt or whatever. Anyways, it went very, very smooth.
Oh, nice.
And it was an awesome experience. So we got to hunt for 3 days in Utah, and then we went and finished the trip in Aspen.
That's fun.
It was a great time. But I got to share that with people, which was probably one of the coolest things of my life is going in thinking, okay, I thought that there was going to be a third of the chapter that enjoyed it, a third of the chapter that hated it,
Right.
like with a passion.
But you were like, we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, we're going to press forward,
Yeah.
make them feel uncomfortable. And then a third of the chapter that would be kind of like, it was something I'll do once, but never do it again.
Yeah.
We had 2 people that didn't like it
Yeah.
in total, and everyone else was like in love with it.
Oh, wow.
Over the moon. They fully dove in.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was awesome. We had some really cool resources coming to talk about how important knowing where your food comes from.
Yeah.
I think I had probably have never told you this, but I went 5 years without eating any red meat that I didn't harvest myself.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, without eating any red meat? Are we sure? Like,
Yeah.
No, okay. That you didn't harvest yourself. Got it.
Yeah. And I never felt better. I
Yeah.
felt so powerful and and then I hadn't had the opportunity to hunt for a while. So I really just didn't eat a lot of red meat for a period of time. But yeah, it was a cool experience to share. I think that's really the only new stuff outside of business stuff.
Yeah.
What about for you?
Oh no, I mean nothing that exciting, definitely. I will just share, it was really funny over the weekend. I just flew quickly to Phoenix for a friend's birthday to surprise her. And so her sister had planned it and asked her, where do you want to go for dinner? So she picks, I don't know if you've been, because you lived in Arizona too, but there's this restaurant called Papados in Arizona.
Oh yeah.
It's like in, kind of like an interesting area. Like there's nothing else really around there to do. And so she
in
picks
Arcadia,
this.
or near Arcadia?
No, it's off the I-17 in Peoria. So it's like,
okay. So it's up north.
like there's literally like nothing else around there that we're going to want to do. So anyway, she says she wants to go to Papados. So we're like, all right, we're going to Papados tonight. It's just like a seafood. They have alligator on the menu.
That's like the New Orleans.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So morning of, she's like, I'm just not really feeling like going. Can we just cancel? And so her sister had to come up with this whole story she's like, no, they're putting on this whole New Orleans themed event. There's jazz, like just made up this whole story for her to rally and come to the dinner. And then, we were there and surprised her. Another friend that lives out of town, and we all grew up together. So it was a big emotional moment. But yeah, that's about it. I mean,
nice.
Nothing too interesting with any hunting,
No, you didn't kill the alligator.
No, I did not kill. I didn't eat the alligator. Right. Yeah, vegetarian. So
Yes. Well, pescatarian. You eat some fish, right?
Yeah.
So getting you out on a hunt is going to be difficult one day.
Yeah, it's probably not my thing. Yeah.
Got it.
Once you get really I initially went vegan and I just did it for health reasons, but I do feel once you're in that world and since then I do eat some fish and I'm not fully vegan, but once you're in that world, you're really exposed to just too much where you're like, it does become a little more emotional, and like you just see things that that there's not really any turning back from, at least for me. So
No, I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, I think, there's a really famous, he's an author and he has a podcast and a TV show. His name is Steve Rinella. He talks about hunting, and he's like a professional hunter. But he talks about if you eat a steak from a supermarket, you're hiring a supermarket hitman.
Yeah.
And so if you don't know where that came from,
so
you probably shouldn't put it in your body.
Totally.
So that definitely, I understand what you're saying. It's like,
and I understand what you're saying too. Like I do respect, that style of, the way that you eat and knowing where everything comes from. And, I'm not one of those judgmental, vegan vegetarians, but, I think everyone has to do what works for them and their body,
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when we told everyone when we got to the ranch that we were going to be hunting, I think in their head, they all had the misconception that we were going to be like sitting in a tree stand or a blind drinking beer and like shooting at stuff.
Yeah.
And I've never done that.
Yeah.
Like I've always hunted, Western, big mountains. And, so I think the first day we hiked like 11 miles.
Oh my gosh.
With the group that I was with.
Yeah.
And we ended up harvesting a big elk, and it was in the bottom of this canyon that was like not a great place to be.
Yeah.
Just from like carrying the animal out standpoint. And at the end of the day, one of the guys came up to me and he's like, I get it now. I understand it. Like, this is really hard work. Like, it is.
What was the first memory that you have of hunting? Like, is there? something that stands out? Because you said you've been doing this, your whole life. Basically,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, it's kind of complex because the very first memory I have is actually not of hunting. It's of just being with family. So again, I probably haven't talked about this in this area, but or on the podcast, but I was adopted at a very young age, and my father's family, they grew up, I guess, post Great Depression, and so in Utah, if you were going to eat meat, you had to go and like harvest it.
Yeah,
like
you had to get your meat.
Yeah,
Find your meat.
And my grandpa was a principal of a high school, so he was like middle class, but his parents were like extremely poor. And so, this wasn't like a fun thing you go and do. This was like the whole family. And actually, I'll rewind a little bit. In Utah, it was actually a state holiday, the deer hunt and the elk hunt. So they would take school off for like a week, and families would just go out and do that. And so my earliest memories were actually just, 2, 3, 4 years old. I probably don't remember those years, but being around the campfire with family and, having a desire to be with the people that got to go out. It wasn't just males, like, women would go, but the younger kids and people would stay back at camp. But where we hunted specifically in central Utah, I mean, we would have like 60 or 70 people camping in our family. So it was like a family reunion.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends.
Yeah.
And it would be, the people that were hunting would go out early in the morning. They'd come back in the evening, and then you just, eat and sit around a fire for hours talking about all of this amazing stuff. And so it was never like really a desire. It was just part of the culture of the way that I grew up. And I was a terrible student growing up. I mean, when it comes to like spelling and reading comprehension, I think I'm dumber than a monkey. And I like when you take the college admission test, I believe that was like factual. I think 36 is perfect. Yeah. I think I scored 34 on math and science and 19 on reading comprehension. Yeah. And I think a monkey filled the test out and got like 21 on reading comprehension. We'd have to fact check that.
Yeah.
I took it a second time and improved. But anyways, my mom would say, listen, you have to pass your spelling tests. And the whole year I would get like, 50%. But the week leading up to the deer hunt, if I got 100%, then I got to take 3 days off and get to go and continue hunting with family. Oh, yeah. And I got 100% every year.
The incentive was there.
Yes. It was like, okay, this makes sense. I'm going to study and actually do this. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I would say like my earliest memories are not actually of the hunt itself. It was more just being with family and, spending quality time in like just the most beautiful areas on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, where you hunt deer in Utah, it's in these big mountains. And, there's different seasons, but we would always be up there when the leaves were changing. So the weather was beautiful. And I mean, those are my earliest memories. Yeah. I mean, of actually hunting, you get to do that when you become 12. Oh. Yeah. And so I had this desire to use the same gun that my great-grandpa, my grandpa, and my dad used. Oh, yeah. But it was, we have it still, but my dad was like, no, you're not going to do that because I'm worried you're going to like drop it or hurt it or something. And it was starting to become kind of a valuable, valuable piece. So I didn't get to do that on my first animal. But
okay. But did you ever get to use it?
I've never shot it. Oh, okay. No. I get the gun, when my dad passes.
Yeah.
But, he's got that under tight, lock and key.
Got it.
So, yeah. But that's a crazy, it's a whole nother area of my life that's very bizarre.
Totally.
That I like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complicated, passion because when I had the desire, I became an archery hunter at a really young age. I had the desire to shoot a big elk with my bow, and it took me 15 years of putting in for a lottery system to have the opportunity to go and do it. Yeah. And when I finally drew the tag, I was dating Rachel, my wife now. Yeah. And she came on the hunt with me, and it was awesome. Yeah. To see that experience. She's also pescatarian. Yeah. Doesn't eat meat, but she got in there and saw the whole thing, so it was pretty fun. But
yeah, it's funny. Who knew today you would be telling the pescatarian all about the kills?
I actually, that part for me is not the fun part. I
can imagine. I can't see that being the fun part for you. But.
No, it's not. But the byproduct of having like a clean source of protein is awesome. Yeah. And really more like the time being in the mountains is like it's a really good reset.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And you have a special place because it's, it brings that, those memories and the nostalgia of being with family. And yeah, it's something totally different. So,
but we're digressing. But I do have a question for you. Papa Do's, have you been to New Orleans before?
I have been to New Orleans.
Have you been for Mardi Gras?
I have not been for Mardi Gras, but I felt like it was Mardi Gras while I was there. But no, I mean, I haven't reached that level.
I went on a guy's trip to Mardi Gras like 3 years ago, and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
My experience wasn't that.
Oh, okay.
So we didn't go to like we went there for like a little bit of time to like the main crazy area of Bourbon Street or whatever, and that place is just wild.
Yeah.
But the rest of it's actually like a family environment. The parades are like a month long, and there's like it's not like a bunch of topless chicks hanging out like on the sides
like what everyone thinks. Yeah,
it wasn't that.
That's only on Bourbon Street.
That's right.
And that's not just Mardi Gras. That's all year long there.
Yeah. When I came back home and told Rachel, I'm like, we have to take the girls to Mardi Gras. She's like, what are you talking about? Like, are you crazy? And I'm like, no. It was a beautiful experience. So many families coming together. The food is amazing.
The food. I actually found like the people there. Yeah. I mean, because we're like, it's a different part of the country. Like I found the people to just be so nice. And yeah. I really like it there.
We're going to have to plan a top producer event at Mardi Gras.
There you go.
When we announce it, people are going to be like, this is not okay.
This? Yeah. All right. So real estate.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I think we're approaching the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should talk a little bit about how we're going to get through the rest of the year and really how do you keep momentum going when it almost feels like it's not necessarily our industries. I think it's just the whole country and the whole world is like, it's holiday time, and not even, consciously. It's like you're wrapped up now in other things. And so how do you guys keep the momentum going?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, I mean, if you just look at the schedule, you've got Thanksgiving, which falls on a Thursday. So people usually take Wednesday off.
Totally.
They're not productive. Friday and, the weekend is dead. And then you're spilling into all of the, whether you're Jewish or, Christian, and regardless of what you're celebrating, people generally have a packed schedule in December. Yeah. And obviously the 25th through the 1st are kind of like people call it kind of just a dead week.
Yeah.
But what we found, at least on the buy house side, is that's the best time to buy deals.
Right.
Because if somebody listed their house in late October, or let's say they did list it in November and it's not getting offers, it's not moving, they likely did that because they have to move.
Right.
This isn't like, hey, we'll list it and see what happens. It's like we have to get an offer.
Yeah.
And so we tend to find that that's the best time of year for us to purchase new inventory.
Yeah.
And on our side, we target, very specific duration. So we're trying to get into a deal and out of a deal within 6 to 9 months on average.
Right.
And so it's a beautiful time to buy because we're not going to be dealing with coming back to market during those windows.
Right.
So, I mean, it is kind of interesting. We have a really kind of unique problem now in that we bought some deals that took us a longer period of time to get through in permitting. And so we might have held it for a year or whatnot, and we're wrapping construction like now.
Yeah.
And so we have to make the tricky decision, do we go and list during that time?
Yeah.
But I think there's kind of the argument on both sides of the coin, which is if there's not a lot of inventory in a specific pocket, we're bringing something back that's fully remodeled, move-in ready, fully permitted. There's an argument that somebody, if they're going to be buying, has to buy.
Right.
I think, obviously if we're bringing something back in the next 6 to 8 weeks, we've got to price it appropriately.
Yeah.
But I think we'll probably end up bringing 3 or 4 big listings back.
Yeah.
That in a normal cycle we might not.
Yeah.
But, this year it feels like we kind of need to for a lot of reasons. But and not necessarily need to. I mean, we can always wait, until January or after the Super Bowl is what people talk about.
Yeah.
But 2 specifically, I won't give out the addresses, but they're in neighborhoods where there's just no inventory right now. And if there is inventory, it's tired.
Right.
So having a brand new move-in ready property, I mean, I think makes sense to bring back, but I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I feel. That's, the same way we operate as well, where, if it makes sense. I mean, if, like you said, if there are a ton of other properties just sitting on the market, maybe it's not the time. I mean, what we've been seeing, I think we were just talking about it. We really expected an influx of buyers post-election that we really haven't seen.
Yeah.
So, and it's surprising. And, interest rates did tick back up a little bit. We had a little bit of excitement thinking that rates were going to be down. And I think they probably will go down a little more coming up. But really, I mean, we do have some inventory sitting. And so it really has to make sense to list something. Because really, I mean, as an agent, and I say it all the time, like you have one chance when you first hit the market. Like it needs to be a big splash and everyone needs to see it. Everything needs to look perfect because that is your opportunity that you are going to get in front of everyone when it first hits. So, things have to be perfect and the stars have to align. But if they don't align, sometimes it makes sense to hold it,
Yeah, and when you say hold it, you mean take it off market and then wait until the buying season kind of picks back up.
Yeah, and I don't even know if I would say take off market. I mean, that for some inventory that's been sitting a long time, but really coming to market.
Yeah.
You really have to chat with your agent and really strategize on if it makes sense to come to market this time of year. I mean, on the real estate side, I feel it's very similar where I think ultimately all that really matters is that most of there are a lot of people that are taking a pause over the next few months, but there are people that can't and that, like you said, that have to move, that have to sell. And so do you want to be the real estate agent that seizes that opportunity, or do you too want to be on vacation?
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to over the next few months. So I think, that's the message I would say in all industries, and especially the type that we're in. It's, whether you're taking time now to prep or just be available and be ready. I mean, everything you're doing now is going to set you up, especially in our type of a situation with real estate. It's going to set you up for next year. So,
Yeah, I mean, so my background, is heavy sales focused. As an entrepreneur, we've always had businesses that are heavily reliant on direct to consumer relationships and selling. And what I've always trained is that the harder the lead is to acquire, the less competition you're going to have. And that is a good lead because your conversion should be a lot higher. Yeah. So the action to go and actually kind of compete for that tougher lead is somewhat difficult, or that means either knocking on doors or cold calling or doing something that a lot of other people aren't willing to do.
Right.
But my opinion is that if you're doing those things on a regular basis, and especially during the time when other people are kind of taking their eye off the ball, you're going to establish a foundation for yourself and likely find business that you wouldn't have found. Right.
Definitely.
And so I guess my perspective on kind of the end of the year is that's just like a mental, like it's almost just a dumb excuse.
I agree.
For people to get lazy, which I understand if people are tired or whatnot.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the right time to do it.
No, I mean, I think it's what sets people apart. It's like, yes, December is going to be busy, but guess what? I mean, August was busy. July was every month. There's always things happening and there's always holidays and there's always things going on. But it really is a mental game. And if you can stay in it, you'll win,
Yeah. I also think that there's something interesting if you're in the business of listing real estate or finding buyers to purchase. You've got to have a reason to talk to somebody outside of just their house, because
for sure.
I go back to like consumers are the most basic creatures. We buy things from people we trust and if we understand the value proposition. So it's trust and understanding. If you trust somebody and you understand their value proposition, why wouldn't you do business with them?
Right.
I mean, it's kind of illogical, right? It basically just means you don't have the need.
Right.
And so having something outside of, hey, is this the right time to sell for you, to talk to the person about, is a really good way to increase contact.
Right.
And, Thanksgiving's coming up. Are you hosting at your house? It's a beautiful way to just touch base.
Have
and
a
talk
conversation.
To people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the more conversations you have, obviously, the deeper that relationship gets. I think the higher your odds of winning that business become. But
Yeah.
Execution is where it all.
Yeah.
Ideas are great. Execution's tough.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
is this a good time, in the brokerage to be recruiting? Is that what happens at the end of a year?
It is. I feel like, everyone has that January, let's start fresh and make
Right.
a change. And so you see other brokerages really picking it up with recruiting. I think, for me and for us, we are recruiting all year long.
Yeah.
And because in my opinion, I think people get bombarded this time of year with
Right.
a ton of messages and calls and everything else. And so, I think what people are interested in making changes, but
Yeah.
I also think if as a brokerage, you're doing the right thing, you have a good product, you have a great reputation, you can be doing that all year long.
So why, we haven't really talked about it on the podcast, but why, if you're at one of the other shops right now, why switch to Innovate?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think most brokerages operate, I would say number one, they want to scale. And we're surrounded by some big box brokerages.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that they approach their agents is really focused on them
Right.
and their brand versus the agents and what they can actually do for their agents to generate business. And I think that's the one thing that really sets us apart because the constant thought in our minds is, why innovate? And, how can we solve for problems in the real estate space? And I think with us solving for problems in the real estate space, it makes an agent's job a lot easier and gives them a lot more tools and resources, just to talk about our InnoEquity product. I know we've talked about that a bunch, but giving an agent the ability to show up at a listing presentation and meet with a seller and have every option to solve any of their problems because of what we provide at Innovate. I think that, why wouldn't you want to be there? Why would you go somewhere else? Where really, the big brands, really their only claim to fame is that they have a name, But the other thing I will say that I noticed quite a bit with the bigger brands is the agent is just a number at that point too, because, they are just talking about their brand and they are recruiting everyone they possibly can. Whereas I think we take a different approach. We do want a little more quality at the brokerage, but I think, these agents, any agent that has left Innovate, there's not a ton, but when they do, I often hear that they do feel like just another number and that their brokerage really doesn't care about their success, because most of the time, to be honest, they don't, they've got hundreds or thousands of other agents. So they really don't care that much.
Yeah. I think we talked about it a little bit a week ago. I think the only people that have left Innovate have left because they have some sort of personal dynamic that's requiring they leave, right?
Yeah.
Which happens everywhere
Yeah.
when you start to scale. But yeah, it's interesting. I guess what you're saying is we actually can provide value for the agent.
Yeah. Yeah. And we are constantly trying to provide more value for the agent. I think, we are in a position with what we've kind of created that there are so many actual opportunities that come to agents as well, where, you're not going to be at a Douglas Elliman and the broker of record is going to say, hey, here's a listing for you. That's just not going to happen. Whereas we are constantly, generating actual business because of our relationships with Buy House and Center Street Lending. And, we're bringing listings to agents, which is, that's crazy. And especially in this type of a market. So,
yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up too, because, this hits on all the topics we're discussing. We had this transaction at Buy House where it's in Beverly Hills. It's a bigger price point, not huge, but it's like a $3+ million listing. and we're wrapping construction mid-October, and we're like, oh shoot, do we bring this to market?
Yeah.
And then if we bring it to market, who's the right agent? And obviously we not exclusively, but 99.9% of the time, Innovate lists our activity, our properties that we're bringing back to market. So you and I have the conversation. We're like, oh, is this the wrong time? And actually, I remember being very confused. This is 3 weeks ago. Like, should we list this right now? This is a big one for us.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of conversation around it. And the data just told us that it was the right time because there's no inventory at our size and price point.
Right.
I mean, a quarter mile away, there's a $100 million plus listing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're coming to market, with a $3 million, 2,700 square foot house. If you have to live in Beverly Hills for your ego or your kids or whatever it is, then this is like a value. This is almost like a first time home purchase in that pocket.
In Beverly Hills, yeah.
Yeah. And so, that's a great example though, because I think you did a phenomenal job selecting the agent. The agent was over the moon, for the opportunity. Especially going into the end of the year.
Right.
I think that specific agent looked at it. I mean, he mentioned that to me. Man, if I can get this into escrow by the end of the year, this is going to be the best year I've ever had by a long ways. We priced it aggressively. We did everything we could. And we got into escrow in 8 days.
Yeah. And within the first week, basically. So.
Yeah, I think there were only like 3 or 4 people that walked it within the first 2 days because it's just where it's at. And, So that's interesting, but you're not going to get that opportunity anywhere else.
No, never. Yeah. And not to say that we're just tossing out listings to everyone, but I think it's the mentality of how do we bring opportunity to our agents? And that is just one example of the many ways that we are constantly thinking at Innovate, how do we bring more business to our agents? And I think no one else is thinking that way, Yeah, I mean, in November, so we're almost mid-November at this point, but we'll probably, even if we take a couple of those listings and push them to next year, we'll still probably bring back $10 million worth of real estate by the end of this year. Right.
Like we'll list $10 million worth of real estate with agents inside of our brokerage.
Exactly.
That are just buy house, owned assets that we're going to bring back to market.
Yeah.
It might be a little more than that. It might be closer to 15, depending on those other 2 deals.
Yeah.
Where are you going to get that opportunity?
Yeah. No, you're not.
So if you're a top producer and you need to do more business, you just have to come to Innovate.
Yeah. Full circle with the recruiting end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What else? I guess the other question I have, is how do you use the next, call it 45 days to prepare for 2025? Is it really just focus on all the actions today and then kind of the same thing, or do you find some time to reset for next year? Yeah,
I think it's important to reset, but I think you should reset whenever you need to reset. It doesn't have to be end of the year. Like, if anything, I think end of the year gets really hectic. So, is anyone really resetting?
Right.
It's really busy. So, if you keep doing what you're doing all year long, you should see the same results that you would see,
Right.
It's more of the message that you can't slow down. And if you do have some downtime, take what you need to reset, but also don't forget that real estate is a 60 to 90. There are sometimes years later you're working with clients. So what you're doing right now matters every year, all year, every day.
Yeah.
You never know when that opportunity or when that client that you're working with is going to come to fruition. So, it's instead of focusing on the distractions or the negatives of like, nothing's really happening anyway. No, there's a lot of business still happening, and you can set yourself up for next year if you're putting the right actions into place.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I feel like we nailed it.
Cool. Well, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. It helps out a lot. Our intention of the podcast is to share information from an active, hunting. I would say like an active, CEO and founder of a not small or medium brokerage at this point, a big brokerage that's regional in Southern California. And then obviously from my vantage point, what's happening in the investment side. Every once in a while we get the grace of Steve with us and hearing what's happening in the lending space. I can't wait for him to come on soon. We've got some really exciting updates, happening in that world. But the intention is just to share that information.
Yeah.
But sharing it with other people, the easiest way for us to do our job and share it, at a global level is for you to subscribe and share it with people that you think would find value out of it. And to Suzanne's point, you might get some random tidbits about hunting or Papados, the greatest New Orleans restaurant in Peoria.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, check us back next week. Thank you very much.
Yeah.